this is what I have to do if you're not here. Or you have to come every time.
You have to one up them.
Oh, jeez. Go ahead, Frank.
Good evening, everyone. Before we start, I will remind council that this portion of the meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube. I will remind council to speak clearly and project their voice when they are talking so people viewing at home can hear. I will now do a roll call of council for the benefit of the public watching this meeting. When I call your name, please wave at the camera and say here or present. I'm Councillor Martin and I am president and chairing this meeting. Councillor McNaught.
Present.
Councillor Merlahan.
I'm present.
Councillor Redicott.
Present.
Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Mayor Shantz.
I'm present.
I need a resolution to convene an open session. Mayor Shantz and Councillor McNaught. All those in favor? That's carried. Are there any closures of pecuniary interest or declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Items come forward from closed session. There aren't any. From the closed session, planning public, none. Presentations, none. Delegations, none. Unfinished business, none. Consent items, none. I guess we can go home. Oh, excuse me. Staff reports and memos. C-24 2020, request for exemption from purchasing policy for municipal drain maintenance. I will ask Deputy Clerk Jeff Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to try to put up a visual here on my screen, so just bear with me for one moment. Oh, I don't think that worked. There we go. That should be working for you.
Mm-hmm.
So this report is a request for 3 municipal drain maintenance projects. Drain 2, shown on your screen, is west of Floridale and northwest of Elmira. There we go. Sorry, the plan is to clean out a short section with a cost of less than $4,500 in accordance with Section 77 of the Drainage Act. Staff are recommending that MRH Construction be selected as the contractor to do the work, and that council pass a bylaw to authorize the work, which will also serve as notice to Mapleton Township, where the drain passes through. The second project, now shown on your screen, is Drain 11. You can see it's just north of St. Jacobs. The planned work is about 1,400 meters of open ditch cleanout, debris removal, brushing, and mulching. Because this is a complex project through a wet area, staff are recommending that we exempt this project from the purchasing bylaw and select MRH Construction for the work. And the township's drainage superintendent is here on the Zoom call to answer any questions about the planned work and the complex nature of this project. The third project here, now shown on your screen, is the Randall Drain. It is near the Breslau Airport lands. The planned work is a full cleanout of parts of the drain, as you can see, and some spot cleanouts and brushing where needed. Again, because of the sensitive nature of the airport lands and a request from the airport for a contractor who has worked at the airport before, staff are recommending that council exempt this project from the purchasing bylaw and select MRH Construction for the work. And again, the township's drainage superintendent can answer any technical questions you have about that. And with that, either I or the township's drainage superintendent would be happy to answer any questions.
Committee members have any questions? Councilor Shantz?
Yes, thank you. Through you to Jeff. The Randall Drain, it says that it's mostly on the airport property, which is regional, but yet it says that we're covering 100% of the cost. Why is that?
Oh, sorry, through you, council, sorry for the lack of clarity there. Just that it's the township, property owners within the township are responsible for the 100% of those costs. Just in comparison, Drain 2, because it crosses municipal boundaries, there will be property owners in Mapleton that will contribute 54% of the cost to the project, but that's not the municipal contribution. That's just property owners within the municipality.
Councilor Shantz?
Yeah, so just a clarification there. So you say that the township is responsible for that, even though the region owns the property?
No, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, the airport, I believe, is one of the largest landholders in the area, and they will have a sizable portion of that bill once it's done, since drainage costs are paid by property owners in the watershed. I don't know if you're looking for percentages. Shannon might have that available if we need it.
Sorry to follow up again, just in your report, it says Randall Drain, 100% cost contributed by the municipality of Woolwich. So what portion, and it doesn't show the region having any of that.
I'm just going to ask the township's drainage superintendent, Shannon Tweedle. Shannon, do you have the maintenance breakdown for the Randall Drain available for us?
Hi, I do have that information available. Unfortunately, I don't have it on hand right now. I can say that for the Randall Drain, the airport lands will be responsible for anywhere from 60% to 8% of the costs, depending on the branch that's being worked on. I did send them a breakdown earlier in the week so that they knew the percentage of costs that they were responsible for. If we're looking for the township of Woolwich direct cost, I can get that information to you tomorrow.
So this isn't necessarily all Woolwich's cost, the 92,000, or is there some over and above that the region is paying for?
Oh, sorry. The $92,000 is the total cost of the project, which is assessed out to all the lands within the watershed. The region of Waterloo is responsible for approximately 60% of those costs, depending on the branch that's being worked on. And the township of Woolwich is only responsible for the roads and properties that they own within that watershed. And as far as I know, they don't own many lands, and there are only a few roads that they will have to pay for.
I think what's confusing is the heading on the chart that says amount contributed by municipality. I think if that said percentage of drain that's in the municipality, that would be a better representation of what that chart really is. So the municipalities aren't paying for those amounts. It's just that, like, Drain 2 is 54% in Mapleton, 46% in Woolwich. Drain 11 is 100% in Woolwich, and the Randall Drain is 100% in Woolwich. So it's those residents who are benefited by those drains that will pay for including the region.
Any additional questions? Councilor Berlin?
Hi, not a question. I'm prepared to move the recommendation as written.
Somebody seconded from Councilor Redekop. Any additional questions? Then I'll ask the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Next, report C14 2020. Election 2022, report 1. Council composition and ward boundary review. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to try to share my screen again with you. I think you should see that now. So as the title suggests, this is the first report for election 2022. Sorry to be talking about this already. It seems like we only just finished an election, but we do like to plan ahead for these things. This report is about two things: council composition and ward boundary. Whoops, next slide. Okay, so the current council composition is shown on the screen in front of you. There are 6 members. That consists of a mayor who's elected at large throughout the municipality, 2 Ward 1 councillors, 1 Ward 2 councillor, and 2 Ward 3 councillors. The guidelines that we use to review council composition are standard for federal, provincial, and municipal wards, and that's 25 plus or minus the average. So to get that calculation, we take the total number of electors, divide by the number of councillors, and come up with an average number of electors per councillor, and then use the upper range as the average plus 25%, and the lower range as the average minus 25%. As I've shown in my report, both the 2022 estimated electors per councillor and the 2026 estimated electors per councillor are within the ranges or the guidelines. You can see on the screen in front of you in 2022, all the bars there are within the upper and lower limits shown in red bars, as well as 2026. A main reason for this is the decision that council made a few years ago to increase the number of councillors in Ward 3 from 1 to 2. You can see that Ward 3 actually has lower number of electors per councillor, but because it's growing the fastest, that will even out over time. So as I mentioned, the results are within the upper and lower range guidelines for both the 2022 election and if we're looking out to 2026. So at this point, staff are recommending maintaining the current council composition. The second part of this report is on ward boundaries. So our current ward boundaries are shown in front of you. Ward 1 is generally Elmira. Ward 2 consists of St. Jacobs, as well as surrounding settlements and rural areas northwest, in the northwest area of the township. And Ward 3 includes Breslau, as well as settlements and communities in the southeast area of the township. In terms of guidelines for establishing ward boundaries, they are generally to protect and avoid dividing communities and neighborhoods. Wards should have reasonably equal population. Council should consider present and future population trends to establish a long-term ward structure. You should consider natural boundaries like roads or rivers as the preferred features to act as a ward boundary. And you should consider geographic form and population density. Ward boundaries should follow straight lines, have few turns, and be easily identifiable. As you can see, ward boundaries are more politically subjective than the more strict calculation-based council composition review. I can tell you that the benefits of the current boundaries are that there are no clear contradictions of the guidelines. There have been no change for the last 23 years, so they've been fairly stable. They have been supported by previous councils, and they do provide equitable representation as shown in the council composition regulations. So at this time, staff are recommending that we maintain the current ward boundaries unless council has concerns with them. So the recommendation before you in my report is to maintain the current council composition and to maintain the current ward boundaries. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Councilor Shantz?
Thank you. Through you to Jeff. Just checking to see if along Northfield Drive between what would be, I guess, Sawmill Road and University Avenue, did those few houses get cleaned up a bit? When I was out campaigning a couple of years ago, there was a couple of houses along there that were pegged as Ward 2, and then other ones that were in our ward, Ward 3. So I'm wondering if that got cleaned up.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that hasn't been changed since the last election. So in terms of cleaning up, I don't believe anything has been changed, but if council wishes us to look into that, we surely can.
Just a suggestion. We didn't have to campaign this past time, but 5 years ago or whenever it was, there was one house that was actually on the south, I guess would be the east side of Sawmill Road or Northfield Drive. And then that was in Ward 2. And then there was one up further that was on the north side that was in our ward. So just seemed like there was a couple that maybe got switched or should get switched around. They actually had the card that said which ward they were in. So yeah. Anyway, if you want to talk about that, I can talk to you offline.
We can ask Jeff to look into that.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to look into that.
Okay.
Does that need to be part of the motion? Or can, let me see what the recommended motion is.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, I think if you want me to look into it, I can definitely look into it with a motion on the table. If there are problems before the meeting where you would ratify this, we could look at that, or changing the recommendation or postponing it.
Any other questions? Somebody prepared to move the recommendation? Councilor Merlan?
So is the motion going to be with taking into consideration feedback from Councilor Shantz?
He is going to check it, and he'll come back with something before it goes to council.
So is that what we're moving then?
Yeah.
So we're moving the recommendation as it sits, the wording that is there, and we're asking the deputy clerk to bring those few items back after he has a chance to look at it to the council meeting. We can pull it at the council meeting and make a minor change if we need to. Or would you prefer to we can leave the whole thing till next week too?
What you wish. Councilor Shantz?
Can we move it as it is written, and then just have staff check along that road and make sure that it's cleaned up? It's not a real big deal. It's just that if you're out canvassing, all of a sudden they say, well, you're in the wrong ward. Makes you look a little silly. It just seems to me that they should all be along Ward 3 along there, because they're kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So I'm prepared to move it and just have staff have a look at it and clean it up.
Councilor McMillan?
Yeah, I was just curious, like if we move it and approve it tonight, and then it's approved as written here, does that, when we ratify it at the council meeting, is that cleanup in there? I would just move to defer it and have staff look into that and bring it back when we clean up those few little houses and then approve it all at once. But I don't know. I defer to everybody else on the easiest way to get that done.
Mr. Brenneman?
I think council is fine on the track that it is, Councilor McMillan, in the sense that, as you know, for the council meeting, nothing is approved until you deal with the committee of the whole recommendations, and you'll have the answer back from staff before that. So basically tonight I see things twofold. One, council is supporting the staff recommendation, but direction is being provided to staff to look at whether a housekeeping amendment does need to be made, and if so, to bring it back before council votes at the summary of the committee of the whole.
So I would second Councillor Merlehan's motion then.
Okay, any additional questions? All those in favor? And that's carried. Report C-17, 2020, procedural bylaw update, Bill 197. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last of my reports on the agenda this evening. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the province allowed for electronic meetings during a declared emergency. Council acted on this and continued meeting electronically to promote physical distancing while still being open and transparent about their decisions. And staff continue to follow changes to legislation and work to improve the electronic meeting experience. One of the things we're working on is trying to improve our sound quality still. Beyond emergencies, Bill 197 now allows for electronic participation at meetings at any time. Staff have drafted an updated procedural bylaw so that council could continue to meet electronically in both open and closed session, where members participating electronically count towards quorum. Bill 197 also allows for proxy voting. At this time, the draft procedural bylaw does not allow for proxy voting. If council did want to allow proxy voting, staff could conduct further research and report back to council at a later date. However, as the report says, you can see that it's not being done by lots of our neighboring municipalities. And I have been looking into it, and it does look like it would be a little bit of work to get that going. So at this time, the draft procedural bylaw in front of you does not have proxy voting. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chair.
Any questions from committee members? No? Is somebody prepared to move the recommendation that the Council of Township of Woolwich adopt the amended procedural bylaw attached as Appendix A to report C-17, 2020? Who will move it? Councillor Shantz? Councillor Redekop? Any questions? All those in favor? And that's carried. Report F-20, 2020, development charges, deferral payment, and interest. I'll ask our treasurer to give us an update. Good evening, Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I know this is a very much a dry and I could say it's probably not a riveting report for council to go through. But the provincial government made a number of changes to the Development Charges Act, specifically through Bills 108, 138, and 197. And so tonight, we're going to be speaking about some of the changes that occurred in Bill 108 and 138, and it was specific to the Development Charges Act, Section 26.1 and 26.2. And these two things changed as of January 1st, 2020. So really the goal of this legislation change by the province is to provide cost certainty to the developers, and it's specific to the developers of rental housing, institutional developments, and not-for-profit housing. So under 26.1, it is dealing with the option of deferral payments for development charges. So the way it's going to work is if you have a rental housing or an institutional development, they will have, instead of paying their development charges, which they normally would at the time of building permit issuance, they would be able to defer it and do it over 6 payments over a 5-year period. So they would pay the first payment upon occupancy, and then the remaining would be over a 5-year anniversary of the date of that occupancy. So the same thing with the not-profit housing, except it will be a 21 payments over a 20-year period. So looking at this, really, as I said, it's to provide some cost certainties for them. So what happens is that if we happen to be going through a development charge or new study, or if we did an amendment, at this moment in time when they actually have their rates set, any of these future rates, actually changes we would make to our development charges, it wouldn't affect that. Their rates would be frozen at that time, which kind of leads me into section 26.2, which also allows these developments to freeze their rates at certain times. And really it's looking at the perspective of if a site plan control is applicable to this development, or if a zoning change is applicable to this development, their DC rates can be frozen at that time. However, if both a site plan and a zoning change was applicable to this development, whichever happens later is at the time that the DC charges would be frozen. And of course, if neither of them apply, then would revert back to the day of the building permit issuance. So kind of looking at both of these scenarios, what happens from us from a, I guess from a cash flow perspective is these deferred payments means that we don't necessarily have the cash in our hands like we normally would under the old development charge regime of collecting at the time of building permit issuance. So therefore the legislation and the act allows us to charge an interest rate on these situations. And so the regional municipalities in Waterloo, all of us have been meeting to work through this new process. And we've all agreed for the rental housing and the institutional development to have an interest rate set at prime plus 2%. Now, council will be familiar with this because we use the same methodology for our extension of services for the long-term receivables we have for our residents. However, one of the things that we also agreed upon is the fact that I think we recognize that we're all here to support affordable housing. And so we are looking at not having any interest rate applicable to the nonprofit housing developments. And for us as Woolwich Council will recall that we exempted this affordable housing in our DCs as it is. So that means for us, we're actually not paying ourselves back interest. So and I think for us, it makes the good sense. But as I said, all the municipalities in the region are doing the exact same thing. So no matter where the developers are, they will come across the same methodology for any developments that they would be coming forward with. So at that time, basically Appendix A has the policy that will sort of guide us through this. You'll also see in the policy that it also allows for these type of developments. If they don't want to go into deferred payment plan, they have the option of actually paying it all up front. But we just need to enter into agreement with these developers to be able to do that, and it's outlined in the policy. So with that, don't want to bore too much of you guys, so I'll take any questions council may have.
Any questions? Councilor Shantz?
Not really a question, just a little housekeeping. And I might be wrong, but the way I'm reading it, I think I'm right. Under your development charges in your under the DC Act for nonprofit, it says no interest rates will apply. And then if you go down a couple of sentences after that, it said development charges shall be paid in equal annual installments plus interest. So I think we probably just have to take the plus interest out of there.
That's through Mr. Chairman, that's a fair point. I think I kind of worded it that way just to be consistent from one side to the other. So realistically, if you look at that, it would be the charge plus the applicable interest, which in this case is 0. But I was just trying to be consistent with the wording. That was all I was trying to do. But I get your point.
I'll move the motion.
Councilor Shantz, are you going to finish? Do you have another question?
He moved it.
I'm just going to move the motion.
Well, I think Councilor Merlehan, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I'll second the motion, but I do have some questions still.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I have two issues through you to Mr. Petherick. First one, I'm just wondering if as a township we're going to be tracking how much affordable housing is going to generate from this policy. Just so we can track from the start date to see, you know, if this was something that compelled builders to build affordable housing. Is that something that you're already thinking of, or how would we do that?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So since there are deferred payments that are going to be applicable to this, we already have to start to keep track of these developments. So for us to be able to come up with some, I guess, some additional information of how we're going to be able to present this to council, maybe it's a good idea to put in quarterly reports, or maybe even an annual report to let you guys know what has been happening on the DC side to be able to keep track of that. So yeah, we will be keeping track of it anyways. But it's probably a good idea from an affordable housing perspective, maybe to report back to council at specific times.
Yeah, I'd like to see like how many units or homes were created through this, and being able to track whether this policy is effective or not. My other comment is more to do with this past, I don't know, a couple months ago, for the first time, a commercial builder working on a new unit that's in the works right now, got a surprise with the amount of fees that he was charged, and I was kind of surprised by it because I hadn't seen what commercial buildings are charged with development charges and the whole list. And I think it's a very modest building, and the fees from the region and everything combined was about $100,000. I'm not sure what that equates with homes for the amount that people are paying, but I think it's somewhere upwards in the 60,000, depending on how big the home is. Maybe you can elaborate more on that. But a lot of the times, when we talk about things at budget, I know as a counselor, we look at the budget, look at these projects, and we're all giddy and excited when it's development charges that are going to pay for certain projects, because we know that it's not going to go to the general levy and increase people's taxes. But I saw the outcome of that is $100,000 bill just in fees and such to pay for growth. And I don't know how much on a bigger projects that would dissuade people from having businesses here and such. But just to keep in mind that our residents and businesses are paying those fees. I did have another point here, and I just lost my train of thought. But I'm wondering if you provided any analysis on what you can expect Woolwich to achieve. When you talked about all of the region, all the municipalities are passing basically the same development charge. It doesn't really make Woolwich unique. You see a lot of affordable housing going up in Kitchener and Waterloo and these high volume areas, and it's really hard for small municipalities to attract builders to come to our community, because they know they can sell their place out in pretty short order when they go to Kitchener and Waterloo. And all we've done with this policy by passing it is even everybody out in the region. So there's nothing more special about coming to Woolwich. Is that something that was talked about as a group, or is there any other things that Woolwich can do to attract builders to come and build affordable housing?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So, one of the things that council has done was, from the affordable nonprofit housing perspective, is that we exempted them from our DCs. So, how much of a draw that is going to be on any of the developers to come up to Woolwich, that's going to remain to be seen. But for the most part, we have done something from a DC perspective. I think what you're really referring to is more so the interest rate that would be charged from a deferral program perspective. I think one of the things that I would say is, I'm not so sure how much that would really necessarily draw people up here. I think the market is probably what's going to draw developers up here more so than this plan. For us, what we're doing is we are just reacting that the province made in the Development Charges Act. But I think the consistency and the interest rate is really probably more city-centric, because I think for them, if they're really more on the even playing field, I think that's probably what they're trying to achieve. From our side, I'm not so sure it's going to really draw developers up here if we don't charge interest. Personally, that's my personal opinion. I don't think it will. But my concern is if we didn't charge the interest, I mean, obviously for us, it's a cost that's going to be, or a lost opportunity that's going to be borne by us, because we wouldn't be able to achieve any of the interest income by not having those development charges in our bank accounts upfront like we normally would, as opposed to deferred payments, which could take, as I said, up to 5 additional years for rental housing.
Okay, I think maybe my question's not so much a financial question as in what we can be doing more. And when we talk about municipal collaboration with the rest of the region of Waterloo, maybe this is something that we could talk about, because the only person or the only group that I can think of benefiting from this policy is the Menno Homes, which is a not-for-profit affordable housing. I don't know of any others in Woolwich that are doing that. Maybe Habitat for Humanity, I get maybe that would qualify. But maybe at a regional level, when they're talking about affordable housing, maybe the Woolwich can get in on those discussions when there are builders, and we can present certain areas in the developments that we have that could put those plans in front to put Elmira or Breslau or any of our communities at the forefront, because with other than Menno Homes and I guess EDACL, or I guess they don't have an A anymore, but there doesn't seem to be that many that have the that have the ability to put up really big projects that would create more affordable housing. I guess that would probably go to David.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah, thank you. Through you to Councillor Millihan and the rest of the council. A timely discussion in the sense that, as I previously reported to council, one of the interesting and great things coming out of COVID has been some collaboration between regular meetings of the 4 townships and all of our not-for-profit and community support agencies. And one of the things that rose to the top as an active discussion right off the bat was affordable housing. Now, in fairness, there were also other priorities identified we don't need to get into tonight. Those priorities were temporarily put on hold just because there was support that the not-for-profits and community support agencies needed in terms of municipalities' expertise in managing through the COVID with respect to policies, procedures, protocols, etc. But as of the last meeting, we've got back on track with community priorities, that being affordable housing. That is on the front burner, so to speak, in terms of a priority. And interesting, some of your comments, Councillor Millihan, in the sense that we did cover a lot of that ground last week because we had invited Dan Dreger from Menno Homes, Executive Director there, and we also invited our local MP and MPP's office because we wanted to cover the full gamut of how do, one, we best advocate for our fair share of affordable housing units throughout the region. I'll stop there for a minute and note that it seemed to be the consensus of the group that while advocacy should always be something that we should do for our township and the rural areas, that it increasingly is an uphill battle because of the amount of units and funding that is prioritized and focused within the 3 cities. There also was talk about how some municipalities collaborated with respect to developing their own not-for-profit housing corporations. However, the consensus in the end, I can say to council, and we have another meeting tomorrow, has been around continuing the good work that I believe the mayor and also yourself, Councilor Merlehan, you're aware of, that started at the Woolwich Community Services table earlier this year on what we can do locally. And certainly where Mr. Dreger for Mental Homes Health is that instead of actually setting up your own corporation, why don't we continue on the collaborative effort, that we're doing now with the 4 townships and the community support agencies, and actually look at arranging appropriate meetings with interested parties that already have the expertise in the not-for-profit sector. That's where we should be focusing our time and energy, because they're the experts in terms of building, getting the funding, and how can we best partner with them. So I will commit to regularly updating council on those discussions. And as I said, tomorrow is our next meeting, and we're going to be reviewing the work earlier this year that Woolwich Community Services had done by arranging a meeting of the minds at their facility earlier this year. And so it is a priority. We'll keep council apprised, but I would say that the consensus in the end was, let's continue through the respective township councils to advocate for our fair share of the affordable housing units through the traditional regional model and funding from senior levels of government. But let's be realistic and know that if we're going to make something happen, then the best effort, the most efficient and effective effort, will be working with someone like a Mental Homes or some not-for-profit corporation that's already established. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilor McMillan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, through you. This is a great conversation. I think a lot of positive things have been brought up and addressed. I would just like to comment on some of the terminology that we're using. When we talk about the Mental Homes project, there's subsidized units in there. I think we're sometimes talking about affordable housing and subsidized housing interchangeably, and I think they're two different things, and we need to address both. The wait list in Waterloo region for subsidized housing is astronomical, and I think that's the one that gets a lot of the attention. But we need affordable housing, which is, I asked one at a fair one time, there was an affordable housing advocacy group, and I asked them, what's your definition of affordable housing? And they said anything less than top dollar is affordable. Like, we're just trying to lower the price by anything that we can. So like smaller rental units, having 2-3 bedroom rental units so people don't have to rent full houses or buy a house. Anything that can reduce the cost of living can be called affordable housing, and subsidized housing would be a piece of that for sure. But I think we got to be careful we're not using them interchangeably, because we don't want to lose our sight on affordable housing, other affordable housing options beyond subsidized housing. So thank you everybody for bringing up that, and I just wanted to add that in.
Any other questions? The recommendation's been moved by Councilor Shantz and seconded by Councilor Merlehan. All those in favor? And that's carried. For the final report this evening, we have Chair Coupé, Director of Infrastructure Services, and he's going to speak to us on automated speed enforcement. Chair, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Martin, to Mayor Shantz, members of council. Let's keep this positivity going. I think we have what I would couch as a good news report here. This is the region's automated speed enforcement program. It has been many years in the making. I think it is a great initiative. Obviously, they're looking to ensure compliance with posted speed limits in school zones and to help protect our vulnerable school-age children. So I don't have a lot to add to this. Unfortunately, COVID did have an impact to this program. All of the area municipalities, including the region, were told to select 4 locations. Those 4 locations are illustrated in this report. However, due to budgetary constraints, the region has had to trim back, and we've been only allowed to select 1. So I would suggest that this is the start of the program. There's really been no timeline given for an expansion. We all selected school zones as they were easy to gain support for, and very well defined. I think those were the two criteria for that. It's quite complicated, and there was a lot of hard work put in by regional staff to get this to fruition. So we are very close to installation, which we'd expect in the spring of 2021. There's still a few agreements that need to be ironed out with regional staff and some of the stakeholders and authority parties. So with that, I would take any questions that council may have on this report.
Any questions? Councilor Merlin.
Through you to Mr. Poupé. I guess, I don't know if this is a question so much. Well, it is. I guess with your discussion with the region people to put this project on, they're paying for it. They're also taking all the revenues from the project. Is the primary principle of this project really to slow driving and to keep kids safe? And I ask that because over the years they've had red light cameras, and they make lots of money and such, taking those pictures and taking the tickets, and then people become safer and don't drive through red lights, and then the revenue decreases, and the regional staff are all upset because now they're not making their budgets because people are being safer and all upset about that. So is in this instance, is it going to be the same where if people become, better drivers in school zones and the revenue is not there, are they going to look at that as a lost revenue opportunity and start squawking about their budgets around budget time?
To you, Chairman Martin, to Councillor Merlihan, I think that's a question for regional staff and what they do with the revenue. I think, wouldn't it be a wonderful world if this thing was revenue neutral and made nothing and everybody complied with the posted speed limits? We know that's not the case, and we know that we have to implement strategies that will hopefully get people to comply, because I think COVID has had a number of some positive effects and also some negatives. And I think we can see that in some of the driver behavior has changed, certainly with some of that too. So we've looked at this as a great initiative to hopefully get compliance. That's really what we've seen this as. We're fortunate that we have to do no administration. There is no out-of-pocket cost for us, so we don't have to worry about what we're doing with any revenue or lack thereof. But I think it'd be great if there was no revenue generated and it stayed up, if that's a fair comment to make. But I can't speak on behalf of the region. He'll be doing all the administrative work.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Shantz?
Are these going to be a permanent install, or are they able to be moved around? And the reason I ask that question is kind of piggybacking off of Councillor Merlihan. If we get to an area where people are complying, could we put a dummy camera there and then move the real camera to another location and move them around a bit so people don't know where the camera is and where they're going to be taking pictures? And, other than there's a camera there, they don't know whether it's live or not.
Yeah. Through you, Chairman Martin, to Councillor Shantz. So that's a great question. What was decided is to have fixed what we're calling birdhouses, essentially. So they're all going to be installed at 8 locations throughout the region, and they will be fixed. The camera, there is only one camera that's going to be floated around for all of those 8 locations. No one will know where the camera is at any time. So that's in confidence, not even council. We won't disclose that to council or anyone. That is just dealt with at a regional level. So they will all look like cameras that are active cameras in all of those 8 locations. And hopefully we get more of those fixed pedestals installed too.
Chair to install sidewalks so the residents have someplace to walk. You like that idea? Can anybody hear us?
Jeez.
You broke the camera, Jared.
Went too fast. Sorry, everybody. Okay.
Back?
I don't know.
Go ahead.
We're back.
Okay, everybody's back. Jared, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, yes.
Okay. We have any other questions? Council McMillan?
Thank you, Chair, through you. Mr. Pupe, you said hopefully we'll be getting other locations. Was there any kind of time frame, or is it just dependent on COVID budgets on when these other locations? I know 2 of these would be fantastic. I know I drive them quite a bit. I don't know the Floridale one quite as well, but the other 2, Three Bridges and New Jerusalem would be excellent locations in dire need of this. Any time frame given on when we might expect that?
Yeah, through you, Chairman Martin to Councilor McMillan. No, there is, and it's not simply the funding for the installation of the camera. It's actually the administrative side. It's estimated that one camera could generate up to 20,000 tickets at a time, and it's really a staffing issue in the administrative side, which is the POA, the Provincial Offenses Administrative side of things. That's part of the hang up really is in prevention of this moving forward quicker. We would all like to do that. I did hear that Toronto has this up and running right now, and it was astronomical, the dollar amount that they were bringing in, which of course generates all that administrative work, because I think it is still a bit archaic in the way they process tickets. So it's twofold. It's that, and it's the finances, but also the administrative side and needing more staff. No time frame though, unfortunately.
Councilor McMillan, any other questions? Oh, does anybody else have any questions? I heard that the city of Toronto had 200,000 tickets in the first little while that they were running. That should be a good stream of revenue. Somebody prepared to move the recommendation before us? Councilor McMillan, seconded by Mayor Shantz. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Chair. Does council have any other business they'd like to discuss? Councilor McMillan, no, sorry. Marlahan?
I actually have I have 2 items that I want to discuss. The first one, I took a phone call this afternoon from a resident at the Assisted Living Center in Chartwell on Snyder, and she called me because she wanted to get a COVID test, and she had gone and had a friend drive her around to all the different areas that are listed on the public health. There's there was about four different locations that she mentioned, and she's 83. She's disabled. She has a walker that she has to use to get around, and each site that she went to, they said it was like about a 3 or 4 hour wait, and that she had to stand in line and wait. So she would go to the next site because she wasn't able to wait around like that, just physically couldn't do it. So anyway, she didn't end up getting a COVID test. She is when I called her, I looked up the process and saw that you could make an appointment at some of these places, which somebody had pointed that out to her before I got there. But her suggestion was, and this kind of goes, I hadn't really thought about it, but with the COVID testing, much like a lot of the healthcare issues and community services, the region provides, they provide them mostly in the cities, and Woolwich Township, Wellesley Township, Wilmot Township, all of these places have to come into the city. You know, it's fine for me who's able, and I can do that. My family can do that, but people that have a hard enough time getting around, they need somewhere local to go, and they can't really take the transit, and it's just very difficult. So we had talked about ideas of parking lot drive-through areas that they do have as some of these testings, and Woolwich Memorial Center, perhaps that could be a potential location for convenient drive-through testing for our residents and our residents north of Elmira and around here. That could be of use as you watch the numbers for COVID in the region. They've been going up as of late. They talk about a second wave, and then we talk about flu and kids going back to school. So testing is going to become more of a priority. And right now, Woolwich Township, we're lumped in with the other townships to go to a lot behind Home Depot. But perhaps we could have some sort of makeshift clinic that would come here like two times a week or something, if that was something that maybe Mayor Shantz could promote to public health as being a regional councillor, or maybe she's got some more ideas. But I listen to her, and she's in a position where she's in a long-term care facility, which has had their troubles, and I thought I told her I would bring it up to council, and we could talk about that and see if we could if there was an appetite for council to request public health to look at Woolwich Township as a potential location for testing.
Okay, before you get to your second item, Mayor Shantz would like to respond.
Sure.
Thank you. My understanding is that hospitals run the testing sites, so it's not the region that runs them, it's not public health that runs them, but the hospitals. And I do know there was testing in long-term care facilities. I don't know if the assisted living side has the same testing protocols, and unfortunately offhand I'm not exactly sure what they are. The St. Mary's Hospital runs a clinic, a test site at the north end of Waterloo, just right on the border pretty much of Woolwich. So I've made appointments there. I've had no problem getting an appointment. I've walked in and never had to wait. So I'm not sure if something's changed since my last test or what, but it's just south of St. Jacobs, just by the stockyards. Excuse me. But I can certainly check into whether there's any possibility of a pop-up site or whatever. I'm not sure we would have the volume here to have a permanent site.
Yeah, sorry, through you, Chair Martin. I asked the same question about the testing within the facility, and she had mentioned that at the start, everybody was tested. They had a team that came in and did a test, and then that was it. The staff get tested, but they're not testing any of the residents on their own on her side. So she's been left to deal with that on her own. And she doesn't have a computer or anything. Kind of finding information out for her was difficult. And I'm, I wish those facilities would facilitate that more for the residents. It should be part of the assisted living. But I from my wife's experience, who's a high school teacher, school's only been in for she started last week. already at her school in Guelph, there's been a number of kids already sent home. And as soon as you show up with a runny nose, you're not allowed to go into class, and you have to get a COVID test before you're allowed to come back, or you have to stay away for 14 days. So, when I hear a resident come and say, and she went to 3 different places and they all told her it was a 3-hour wait, I can see that getting quite more difficult for students, because just anything like a runny nose, a headache, anything, all of a sudden they have to go get a COVID test, or they're not allowed back in school. So that is, I feel, going to be an issue. Perhaps the scientists that are working on this for Waterloo Region know a whole lot better than I do, but I'm just putting that out there for discussion for us as council to see if there could be some advocacy on the part of the testing.
Councilor
I can do
McMillan?
that.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I'm all in favor of advocating on behalf of our citizens. I think that I'm not sure it shouldn't be directed at our MPP, Mr. Harris. I think the provincial funding for testing, the provincial funding for, a lot of times they're running out of swabs during the day. It's not just that you wait, you could get to the testing center and they could have run out of test kits. And I don't think, yes, how the region distributes what they have within our region or the hospitals, as Sandy mentioned. But I don't think we could just advocate to the region on this. I think it has to be the provincial government and just letting them know that our rural constituents have to drive and have to wait 3 hours, and some of them can't do that. I'm all for advocating for this cause.
Councilor Merlin, did you have another item?
Yes. Okay. Is there anything else to do with the testing before we move on? But the other item is completely different. Is that something that we could ask staff to maybe make some phone calls on our behalf? I know even MP Tim Lewis could be helpful. This isn't. I would make the phone calls if that's what it's going to take, but I would see if staff could get more information, if we could direct staff to look into that.
Mr. Brenneman?
Yeah, so just to confirm, so Mayor Ponce will bring this up through the Regional Pandemic Control Group channels. Staff, we have advocated in the past, all 4 rural CAOs throughout the first wave. However, as we head into a second wave, I think it's an idea that we have to continue to advocate for, and I would be happy. It sounds like there seems to be general consensus to have staff follow up through our staff channels as well. And I think at a political and administrative level, that sounds like a good plan. So I think we're on a good path there, Councilor Milligan.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor McMillan?
Yeah, I'm happy to hear Mr. Brenneman say that the admin channels are a good route there. I think a political channel isn't bad either. And I don't know what the process is, but a letter from council to our MPP and to our MP as well, advocating for better access to testing for rural citizens, I think would also, I think has to go hand in hand with staff doing the back channel work. So I don't know what would be required or if the rest of council feels like they could support that, but a letter from council to our MP and our MPP, I think would be appropriate as well.
Mr. Brenneman?
So if council, if council would like, you could probably do, a motion that would cover all of those things, which is that the motion would be as simple as that the mayor and the CAO be directed to advocate for appropriate rural COVID testing for the residents and citizens of, of the township. And that we do so through the regional pandemic group, through administrative channels, and also by following up with our MPP's office with respect to ensuring appropriate resources are provided to the testing facility. If council wanted to do that, that would be the framework of a motion. I'm sure the clerk's office could frame, but that would be the essence of it. If council wants to do that route as well.
Is everyone good with that?
Yeah, I'll move that motion.
Seconded by.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried. Councilor, second.
Okay. Okay. My second issue is also a regional issue, and it's to do with our roads, specifically Arthur Street South, Arthur Street North, Church Street East, and Church Street West, and the intersection. These sections of road have had nothing done to them in so long. I believe 2013 was the year that downtown Elmira was supposed to be paved by the region. And mysteriously that project disappeared and didn't happen, and it still hasn't happened. I know I'm expecting to hear from Jared on some of this stuff because there's plenty of excuses that have been given. But our roads and those regional roads downtown are really bad. I bring this up because I'm a cyclist. I cycle to work every day. I go downtown Elmira, and I'm not afraid of the traffic. I'm afraid of all the big cracks in the road that my wheel would get stuck in, the potholes. It's really brutal. And when you walk downtown on the sidewalks, in 2014, all the trees were removed and taken down because of the emerald ash borer. And at that point, we were, they were just came down overnight, and we were told as councillors that don't worry, there's a plan. 2 years, the downtown is going to get this whole beautiful streetscape. I've been sitting on these regional committees for the road reconstruction projects, and I was on the Church Street East project. That was in 2015, I guess, early 2015. I've had several meetings with the project manager. Got really excited about them when they wanted to put more pedestrian islands in the road, which I told them not to do, and they finally agreed. But nothing has been done on Church Street East, and nothing has been done on downtown Elmira. And the project manager for the region quit with probably 6 months to a year ago. And to the best of my knowledge, I've followed up with Mr. Poupé a number of times on where the projects are at. And he can't get emails back from people to tell them who the project manager is. I mean, we're basically starting all over. We've done public consultations years ago now, and we need the intersection done. We need downtown Elmira looked after. I'd like to see a streetscape plan that I've heard about for 6 years now. Haven't seen anything from that. I'm really kind of fed up. The things that happen at the region, the inadequacy of how they treat the projects in downtown Elmira really make me angry. And when I hear the money that they waste in Waterloo and Kitchener and Cambridge on those temporary cycle lanes, they spent $500,000. That would go a long way in downtown Elmira, a really long way. And they look at those projects and go, well, it's only 0.035% of a budget of $1 billion or whatever. So that's like no money. And it's like, no, it's $500,000. And the projects so far, I haven't heard that it's a money issue. A lot of them have been approved. They've had mix-ups with putting other projects in so that there's no way to people detour around projects because they've scheduled them on top of each other. I am at the end of my rope with the region, and I hope that there's some new information here that I haven't gotten yet on these projects, but we need something to start moving on downtown Elmira on the roads because they're unsafe for cyclists because of the poor maintenance that the region does on these roads. Arthur Street North is brutal. That bridge is brutal. And anyway, I don't even know what else to say, but I would like to hear from Jared if there are any updates on any of those projects. And I would like to maybe hear from Mayor Shantz as our regional rep, what we can do to push these projects along, because this is far too long. It's disgracefully long.
Jared?
You're muted.
That would be $5 in another meeting. Yeah. $50 here maybe. Through you, Chairman Martin, to Councillor Marlahan. Certainly appreciate your frustration. There is an update in that we did have a meeting with the head of the department, actually a couple of the heads. It was some budget discussions. We did raise all the concerns regarding timing, detouring, how they were going to line up, appreciating that we have projects as well that we are trying to incorporate into these areas too. And absolutely can confer your timing. I remember 2013, we had to hurry up and get some work done because it was going to come, the paving was coming in Arthur in 2013. So, we share some of that frustration as well. I would say the good news is that it was acknowledged. There are big problems there with timing and with respect to the lack of progress. However, I guess we'll say it this way, is that the person who is returning to pick, there is a person who was the original project manager is returning. So I believe they were to return this month. I think it was just maybe about a week or so ago. So the timing is appropriate in that myself and Ryan Tucker we're going to reach out to that project manager. So that's good news because there's continuity still. We haven't, we've lost time, but at least we haven't lost knowledge. So, that's, I would say, is the good news part of that, because they've been through the process for, well, not quite as long as you or I, but close. So that's what I have to offer at this point. There is a commitment to move. We do want regional staff to attend to speak for their budgets. So that will be arranged with that department as well. And that alignment of timing should be a very important piece. And they will be able to speak to those times, because that's certainly a concern that we've raised as well, given the detour work. But it is not lost on us the amount of work that they are trying to line up in Woolwich. Like, there is certainly a significant amount of infrastructure work proposed in the township. And this is intersection work, underground work, bridge work, just their road rehabilitation with no underground too. So there's a significant number of projects that they have identified in Woolwich. The problem will be spacing them out appropriately. And of course, we have to worry about resident fatigue and driving through detours on detours on detours. So there's a lot of concerns and a lot of pieces, but those discussions have started up again as recently as last month.
Councillor McMillan?
So did Mayor Shantz want to respond to the direct question before I went, or would it be better if you went last after
Either way.
Either,
I was just gonna say that, I certainly understand the frustration of having, streets in the condition they're in. I think the worst thing that could happen for us, is if the region redid those streets with a streetscape that they, put together, and then we finished that, opportunity consultation, the business development consultation, planning that we had scheduled. And that consultation comes back and says, well, your street parking should be moved, a block west so that you have parking here. That would allow you to expand the sidewalks, give your restaurants room for sidewalk patios. And now the region has just redone those roads, and we're looking at 40 years before that's a possibility. I'm all for advocating that the region hurries up with that, but not until we get that consultation done, because the streets that we have in the town are the soil that the businesses grow in. And the streets have developed the downtown that we have. It's built for a lot of one-stop shopping, and that's how we get real estate offices and insurance offices. And we've had some great wins in our downtown in Elmira. The Indian restaurant's fantastic, Kitchen Cuttings is fantastic, the coffee shop's fantastic. We've had some wins, but the soil has built us one-stop shop where you drive in with your car, you park right in front of the store, you get out, you do your one piece of business, you get back in the car, and you go to your house. And I'm not sure that that business consultant isn't going to tell us that we need to revamp the street. And if the region rebuilds that street before that consultation gets done, I feel like I'm afraid, I'm terrified that we're going to miss our one opportunity to develop a vibrant downtown that can sustain Elmira remaining a community. Councilor Merlihan, your event there, 7 Ways to Kill a Community, the things that people like that talk about is if you don't have a core, you don't have a town. If we're going to save Elmira, we have to have a core. Otherwise, we just turn into a subdivision. And if the region rebuilds that road and they don't do it right, and then we get that consultation done, that we had the money earmarked for, we're going to miss our one chance. So I'm all for advocating that the region hurries up. But if we're going to do that, then I think we need to get on double time on that planning consultant to review what opportunities we have for downtown Elmira, for growing businesses, for growing residences downtown, because the two go hand in hand, and we can do the consultation before the road work, but it'll be less effective, much less effective if we do it after. So I'm all for advocating, but then let's get double time on the consultation.
Mayor Shantz?
Yeah, thank you. For a number of years, I was under the impression that Arthur Street was going to be redesigned, but Mr. Poupe, maybe you can help me out here. Fairly recently, I was made to believe that it's really just a paving of Arthur Street. So can you tell me, are they actually reconstructing the shape or anything of the street, or is it simply going to be repaved? I know there's underground work to be done on Church Street.
Yeah, no, through you, Chairman Martin, Mayor Shantz, it's accurate that the whole impetus for the Arthur Street project was just to replace asphalt. The sidewalk, as it's well known, is unfortunately the township's responsibility in a regional corridor. So really changes to that would be our costs. The region does provide a percentage of construction costs for streetscaping. That's a good news story. The other good news story that changed as recently as last year was the scope of the project. So they've expanded the scope significantly on Arthur Street, which likely is going to result in a further delay. If you looked at all those projects, Church Street East would be the farthest along by far. It would be the closest to be done. But Arthur Street has now expanded from South Street all the way out to Kenning Place. And what that entails for us now is to look at servicing strategies all the way out to Kenning Place. So that's a bit of a game changer from a scope perspective, and certainly will add costs to not only the township, but also the region, but then further will also provide additional funding for streetscaping. So, there's some good news in that. Timing though is the concern, but you're absolutely correct. It was a shave and pave, to put it bluntly, by the region with some bridge rehabilitation work.
So for the benefit of the BIA and then the people who are wanting to beautify the core, which essentially I would say is from Arthur Street from Church to where? South Wyatt?
Park. Park Street.
Yeah.
So for that beautification, that sort of creating that atmosphere, is there anything in what the region is doing that would prevent them from going ahead with any kind of streetscape or anything else? Like if the region does not intend to change the configuration of the road, is there any reason that we continue to hold up the streetscape portion?
So I would say that we would likely drive that process as far as what Woolwich would like to see in the downtown core. I would liken it very much to the intersection change. And I think, to Councillor Merlehan's point, is I think the fact that we haven't had meetings, and this was not lost on us two regional staff, is that we need to get in a room to hash these things out, because we have active council members who are very concerned and would like to see change in the downtown core. So, we've conveyed that message, and I think, we need to have those meetings occur as soon as possible, which we are expecting to have happen here, I would say, within the next month. I would say we should be able to get into some meetings knowing that we have a returning project manager. But I think that the region will certainly most definitely look to the township to sort of see what we envision for the downtown core. And of course, naturally, costs would be assigned appropriately too, although the region would contribute a portion thereof.
And so what's the best way to get everybody's input so this is a coordinated effort, that we're not doing something and then ripping it out, either us or the region down the road? What's the best way to manage that?
Right. So, I guess the moving piece with the BIA and the CIPP, and that's not my sort of bailiwick, but I'm appreciative, I'm on the periphery of that. I don't see any lost effort on doing that work and having that looked at and trying to incorporate that through the large reconstruction project. As Councillor McMillan says, this is a bit of a once, in a 40-year opportunity here. So it's probably worthwhile having some concepts and then determining how those can be implemented through the larger reconstruction project. So timing would be still with us, I think, on that part of it. And then looking to try to incorporate that through the Regions project, which, if I was guessing right now, Arthur Street, are we talking 2023 for construction? Maybe that's the reality right there. Don't know.
Can I just make one more comment? Yeah, thanks. And just further to Councillor Merlehan's comment, despite the fact that things aren't moving, I do advocate for our projects, often behind the scenes, and it is frustrating when they keep getting deferred and deferred and deferred. So I share your frustration, and rest assured that I do advocate for our projects whenever I can.
Yeah, it's sorry, can I just comment to that? Sorry, Chair Martin. Yeah, I get it, and the thing is, with these projects, they haven't even been deferred. There's no communication from the region, and I know a lot of that is because the project manager left. We're hearing now that he's coming back, but I don't know. It's another project that the region looks after, that is kind of foisted upon us on their terms only, and it just constantly feels like Woolwich Township, our voice doesn't matter, and I'm sick of it. I'm really, I know they own the road. It's very frustrating when people call me and they complain about road noise and traffic and trucks going, and I say, you know what? It's the region. Like, it's a battle for the tiniest little things, and it's really wearing. I don't know why we're battling the regional staff to get them to look after their road, but I invite you all to hop on your bike and bike downtown Elmira. It's brutal. It is absolutely brutal, and it's a shameful. Just the road, the condition of the road is shameful. It's nothing to be proud of if I own that road. But I appreciate everyone's comments. Thanks.
Councillor McMillan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Through you. I think I would like to note that there have been some lower tier municipalities who have convinced the region to change regional plans. And I think that it happened in Uptown Waterloo. It happened, people tri-tagged the active transportation group with the Iron Horse Trail. The region had a plan. There's been a couple of them, and lower tier municipalities or advocacy groups have gotten them to change their ideas. And I think if we just let the region do the redesign and rebuild that road, Arthur specifically, but our whole downtown, Arthur and Church East, I guess, they're going to look at that primarily as a transportation route. And how do we get trucks as fast as we can from the south end of Woolwich to the north end of Woolwich, or from the east end of Woolwich to the west end of Woolwich? And our one chance, in this generation to get them to maybe think of it as something different is if we have a unified voice, where if it's all of us on council, if it's the Elmira BIA, if it's an outside consultant saying this is how things could be done differently. So I appreciate that staff are going to get in a room with regional staff in short order. And I don't mean any disrespect, but I think the outside specialists, quote unquote specialists, saying, this street should look different, and this is what could happen if this street is different, when added to the voice of our staff and added to the voice of our council and the BIA, I think carries more weight. It gives us a chance to change what the region might do. And so I wonder, is there a chance for us to put that Elmira core consultation on an upcoming agenda where we could get that started if we're going to be pushing the region to accelerate their plans with Arthur? Could we get that on an agenda item, because it was taken off of the books for good reason? Can we discuss putting that back on? Because it's so important that we think of that road, Arthur especially, but Arthur and Church, as more than just throughways for traffic.
Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we've discussed that internally, absolutely, just fairly recently, about bringing that project forward. The plan is to bring it forward again, as you sort of alluded to. It was one of those items put on hold because of COVID, and we're looking at our financial situations. We've started to do some internal work to bring that forward, to bring it back to council, to get it to reignited, I guess. So we are certainly planning on doing that fairly soon.
Mr. Brown?
The other thing council may wish to consider, I believe, Mr. Coupe, I may be correct in this, that we had plans at some point to also have regional staff, as they historically have done, come to council to not just talk about this particular project, but to talk about other regional projects on the capital plan. That, in the 13 years I've been here, has been a historical thing. I think it's kind of fallen off as of late, but perhaps that's also a chance for the township council to advocate to the appropriate regional staff. And we could even ask, for example, for some of the senior staff like Commissioner Thomas Schmidt to be here because of the concern we have for some of these projects and staying on track. But that would also offer council an opportunity to look at things holistically in terms of not just what they would like to see with respect to this particular regional project, but other regional projects as well. So I just throw that into the mix, that we've done that in the past. It probably fell off, certainly this year because of COVID, but we certainly could have regional staff come in, and that would be a chance for council to ask certain questions and also outline certain expectations.
Okay. Mayor Shantz?
I'd like to see that happen. So would you do that at the staff level, David?
Yep, we can.
Okay. Councilor Merlan?
And when we're talking about the streetscaping plan, that's not the same as what Mr. Pomponi just talked about. The planning end of things isn't actually the streetscape plan. To the best of my knowledge, we're talking about how things, what kind of zoning is applied, but the streetscape plan now, I mean, I've talked to your predecessor, Mr. Poupé's predecessor, for years about the streetscaping plan that he was working on, and we talked about how the trees would be planted and these fancy $15,000 pots that would go in the ground to make sure that the trees would actually grow and be healthy. Those kinds of things. I've yet to see that plan. It's been talked about for years, and there hasn't been any council input on to any of those plans. And there hasn't been. Well, maybe there has been input from some of the tree groups and such that we're working, but I know council hasn't had a good talk about what kinds of things could be downtown Elmira, what kind of opportunities are there. And I know somebody coming in is great and all, but it'd be nice to have that discussion through the things that we've talked about with the residents and businesses over the years. You're not going to find out any new information as to what's wrong with downtown. It's been pretty apparent for a lot of years, and structurally the region's prepared to shave and pave the road, and any costs would be borne upon Woolwich, which I don't have a problem with, as long as we start working on that plan now and we can start budgeting. So if 2023 is a potential earmark date for this project, then we need to start talking about it now and resurrecting whatever plan your predecessor had started on, and or start from scratch. I'm okay with that as well, but I do want this to start moving forward, and we need the region to be a partner with us. And I've been pretty vocal about how I feel about the region because of my many experiences of every single time it being difficult. So if any of them are watching, I would really like to work with you on these projects so that we can work for the benefit of the residents of Elmira and Woolwich and Waterloo region. That would be wonderful. It would absolutely be wonderful if we could, work together on creating these projects for the residents rather than fighting each other on why we can't do everything. And it's always this cookie cutter approach that, we do this in Kitchener, so we're going to do it here, even though Kitchener doesn't often have tractors going through their downtown and their streets. They don't tend to listen to that, but I'm willing to brush the big chip off my shoulder to make this happen, but I need to start seeing something from the region, or the chip is just going to get bigger. So I'm going to just leave it at that.
Councilor McMillan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Through you, perhaps could Mr. Pomponi answer a question there about whether that consultation would take in Sorry, I think everything's getting a little jumpy here. Sorry, if you could answer whether that consultation would take into account things like how much on-street parking is needed, would narrower streets and larger sidewalks create different business opportunities. And I would disagree that you're not going to hear anything new. Like if you look around, if you look at planning in urban centers, in small rural centers, in the town cores, in the last decade, you've seen differences, you've seen changes. And the original plan to rebuild Arthur, if we looked at it 10 years ago and looked at a blank slate redesign now, it's going to be dramatically different. Things are way different now than they were even 10 years ago. So I don't think that we can say there won't be anything new. I think there will be a lot new. I would ask that question. Would the impact of that, would that consultation take into account things like road design through our core?
There's only a certain amount of work that it can look at because the infrastructure for the roads is there. Certainly the idea of it was to not get into the specifics, but to set a stage to get into more details. So it wouldn't include streetscaping, which I think is what a question maybe Councillor Merlihan asked. The idea is to look at some of the challenges and look at some of the opportunities that we have in the downtown. This was initiated because we did have the interest in land acquisition and disposition of some of our lands down there. It would look at things like land holdings and create some more of the conceptual envisioning work that would be done. So for instance, when it comes to streetscaping, it wouldn't get into this is a type of planter that you should have, this type of tree that would go, and how many there would be. It won't get into the details of number of parking spaces, but it could look at some of the conceptual designs of how on-street parking, bump outs, turning lanes, things like that could be considered as part of this. The idea was to create it to get the first step. Certainly the work that the region's working on, and I think Jared may have talked about this, is a streetscaping component of it. This would not be a streetscaping component, but it would give basis for streetscaping to be done once that road reconstruction happens. So it gives us some sort of vision, some sort of direction to what we'd like to see happen down there. I hope that it helps.
The only additional thing that I would like to add to the conversation is, if my memory is correct, and Jared, I just can't remember if you were with us at that time where we were looking at the region and the work that they were going to do in St. Jacobs. The whole idea of improving streetscaping came up at that time. And I think if council will recall, I think it was some members that are still on, there was a significant cost, which in turn, unfortunately, the region was not prepared to partner with us. It was going to be at our cost. And if I remember correctly, it was significant enough that we weren't going to be able to, afford it at that point in time. So really what I guess I'm saying is that be prepared for the fact that if we want improved streetscaping as part of this, there will be a price tag to that. And we're just going to have to be prepared for what that may potentially mean in terms of budgetary requirements.
Councillor Merlihan?
I promise this is the last I'll say. Councillor McMillan brought up the event 13 Ways to Kill Your Community, where Doug Griffiths showed up and talked about these different ways, and one of them was about the downtown, and I agree with everything he had to tell the community. In the analysis, which maybe you didn't see, I did pass it along to council and to our group. His analysis of Woolwich Township and Waterloo Region as a whole is that we overanalyze everything and we don't actually get around to doing things. This is one of those areas. And the reason I'm so upset about it is if you just walk across those crosswalks that have the bricks in them, I'm surprised we don't have people breaking their ankles going through that. They're so bad. I had a resident just this past year who there was a swoop in the bricks, and she fell down and had her whole face banged up and was in the hospital. She looked like somebody like beat her. It was so bad. So I visited her last year. So and every single time I'm looking at these things, I'm asking staff, when are we gonna see some improvements? Because right now, as much as I would like to see a whole brand new spanking downtown and all sorts of places for people to visit, right now I just want the bare minimum. I want roads that don't have potholes. I want sidewalks that people aren't going to get hurt on. I want crosswalk. Just put paint on the road. They'd be better than those bricks that are actually a safety hazard, in my opinion. And I please walk downtown. All where the old trees used to be are all a trip hazard. I just wanted to, I want this done. I want some sort of movement at the region where they acknowledge our existence and that these projects are going to go ahead and not keep getting deferred. But overanalysis is one thing. I think it paralyzes a lot of things where we're too afraid to make decisions because it's, somebody is always not going to like what you do. That's fine. But the decision has to be made. And I'd like council to be part of the conversation when we talk about streetscaping. And anybody who doesn't like whatever we decide on, I'm happy to defend and take the heat for it because that's the job. And I've been frustrated that I've been on council for 6.5 years now, and I've been dealing with these projects for the entire time, and we've got absolutely nothing. So now that's the last I'm going to say.
No, I think we've heard enough. Keep it short.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Yeah, I live downtown, so I walk downtown a lot. I understand the frustration. But if we accept the bare minimum now, the bare minimum is all we're going to have for the next 40 years. And Councilor Merlehan, you want council's voice to be a part of it. I agree. It should be. The best chance we have for council's voice to be a part of it is to get more people behind us, to get the BIA involved, to get the outside consultation done. The more people we add to it, the more weight we bring to our voice. I agree with you. On everything except let's take the bare minimum, because then we're stuck with the bare minimum. Our downtown's going to look the same for the next 50 years.
Got the shots.
I just have one thing to say. I understand your frustration, and I just say Snyder's Flats Road.
I knew that was coming.
Zinga.
Yeah. I don't want to leave this on a negative tone. We've heard what you said. And I for one, probably travel the region probably more than anybody. Maybe that's not true. And I'd like to give the region some credit for what they do. I know region-wide it has a really big, expensive project. Ottawa Street would be one. But looking through our own community, except for Bloomingdale, we've got Sawmill Road done, Conestoga is done, the roundabout's done, Oxbow Road, after it's been deferred 3 times, it's going to be done this year. St. Jacobs downtown's done, Heidelberg's done, move across to Wellesley. St. Clements is done, and this year they rebuilt 2 bridges between line 86 and going to Linwood. So they've had a lot of projects, and they can't please everybody, and they've only got so much money. And I know some of the projects at times cost a whole lot more than what they think they're going, or they run into things they haven't expected. So I wouldn't want to be real hard on them. I understand the frustration, but I mean, Sawmill Road in Conestoga was deferred twice. Bloomingdale's been deferred 3 times. Oxbow Road was deferred 3 times. That's part of it. That'd be my comment. Okay, moving along.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
May I bring up one point of other business? It's a procedural matter. We were moving quickly at the beginning of the meeting and I forgot to stop you. We missed item 9.2, which is items for information, the technical advisory group minutes. If you want to ask for a motion to receive those.
you say number 9.
9.2 on your agenda. Yeah. Yeah, and sorry, Mr. Chair, I didn't have it in my notes, so you might not have it in yours.
No, I don't think I do.
Yeah.
So what,
It's-
approve,
It's 9.2 on the agenda that was published online. It would be a motion to receive the technical advisory group minutes from July 30th of 2020.
I'll move it.
so move, somebody would second that? Dr. Shaw, any discussion? All those in favor? And that's carried. Is there any discussion on the outstanding activity list? We have one piece of correspondence. Does council want to take any action? Township of Ure and Kinloss regarding support for cultural service sporting clubs. Okay. Public notice, there are two public notice on the agenda this evening. First one, notice of hearing for the Committee of Adjustment on Monday, September the 28th, 2020 at 3:30 p.m. Second one, notice of a virtual public meeting on Tuesday, October the 6th, 2020 at 7 p.m. More information on both these notices is available on our website. Notice of closed meetings, nothing. Before us, notice of motion, nothing. So we're done. Mover for adjournment. Councilor Merlehan, seconded by, everybody want to stay? Councilor Sean, all those in favor? That's carried. In closing, council would like to thank all who tuned in tonight on our YouTube live stream. Council members, I'll remind you to stay connected on Zoom until the live stream has stopped. Good night, everyone.